I talking too loud?
Ms. V, would you give us an invocation, please, ma'am?
Sure. Are we gonna do the flag, the pledge as well? Okay, let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for the meeting that we've already held this evening, and now we're going into another one. We thank you, just for giving us understanding, clarity of mind, and consensus. And now that as we are starting another meeting, we just thank you for what you're going to do. We thank you for all of your provisions, and we ask that you help us to be good stewards of your blessings, and that you will continue to bless us 100-fold over what we already received. These are all blessings we ask. And before I end this prayer, we ask that you be with those who are hurting. Be with the McCants family, Ms. McCants, in the loss of her husband, and so many others who are hurting over the loss of a loved one. And also be with those who are still struggling with COVID-19. We know that you are a God that heals, and we are leaning and depending on you to pull them through. These and all blessings we thank and ask in your name. Amen.
Any changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
Have a motion to approve the agenda. Second. Moved and properly seconded that we approve the agenda. All in favor? Aye. Mr. Nixon.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're here to, again, work on our budget, and we have asked those departments that have requested additional personnel to come tonight and tell you a little bit about their request and why they feel it's necessary to try to add additional personnel in their departments. So we prepared a small slideshow, and then we're going to turn it over. I think I see everybody here that's supposed to report tonight. And welcome, everybody. Thank y'all for being here. And we'll go through them one by one as we get through the agenda, if that's okay, sir.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's move on to, we're going to do a little bit of a recap first, just to remind council where we were at our last budget workshop. With, again, the revenues, just over 51 million, the expenditures at 51.7, so we're at a deficit as it stands today in our general fund of $543,315. There are a number of moving parts in there that we will obviously be discussing at future budget workshops with the county council. Capital request, you see, we still are looking $3.5 million, and we had just over $13 million worth of requests, so a negative balance of just shy of $10 million at 9.8. And again, we'll have a in-depth conversation as we move forward into capital, particularly now as we're starting to get a little bit more information about the federal recovery dollars, recovery funds that are rolling out. So we'll have a better definition of that, and we may be able to utilize some of those funds to offset that deficit. So we just want to give you a real quick overview of where we stood with the general fund budget. Again, the purpose of tonight is to address the personnel request. We have a number of folks here this evening, and we have put them in order. I believe we will start with the solicitor. We have Penny here.
Hello, everybody.
And he will address the request for the additional personnel. And you can see, and we presented some of the information regarding their overall budget. And we just turn it over to the solicitor. If you have any additional questions, I'm sure they'll address those tonight. I don't, certainly this is council's will, but tonight this is for information purposes. I don't expect any kind of vote or movement on this, but just to gather information as we move through the budget process, we can determine which action council wants to take. So with that, let's listen.
Mr. Penny, you seem to have gotten a little bit grayer since I saw you last.
It's possible. It's possible. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be back before you this time after a rough year. I have written to Chairman McCain and Administrator Nixon. I hope you'll get a chance to read my letter. It goes into detail why I am asking for additional personnel for the solicitor's office. Several things have gone on over the last 2 years. The first thing that was a major factor was that I believe the IRS changed their way of dealing with our personnel on contracts. We were being able to handle cases with contract lawyers for many years, and the IRS changed the way that was done, so that now those are now full-time employees. So they have put a big impact on my budget, because I couldn't afford to lose them, I needed to keep them, but now I'm having to pay them fringe benefits, and that costs more money. Because of that, along with another change, which was that our two of our senior lawyers left. One became a judge, one became the chief circuit defendant for the public defender. They obviously were very experienced lawyers. I've lost them, and the only way I'm going to be able to replace them with seasoned attorneys instead of rookies coming out of law school is to put more money on the table to try to acquire new lawyers. I have estimated that a starting lawyer with 3 to 5 years experience is going to cost me about $70,000. I've asked for 2 positions at $70,000 to be put on my budget line so that I can go and acquire these lawyers. I'm down to 7 lawyers now, and that is a very big problem because we have just come off a 12-month shutdown of the court system. So we have very serious cases, you read about them every day, that are unable to be moved. We are opening up court next week for the first time, where we're going to be able to bring in a jury and try some of our serious cases before a jury. We are asking that we have these additional lawyers put on board so that we can handle the backlog. The numbers in the letter I wrote at the end of December 2019, we had 3,265 open cases. We now have over 4,700 open cases. And that increase is due to the fact that we couldn't run court for a year. Those 4,700 cases now have to be divided by 7 lawyers, where the Bar Association recommends no lawyer handle over 300 cases. All of my lawyers are now handling 300 cases. And it's just not feasible to put more cases on them and try to get them to work. The lawyers that are there, that have been there a long time, haven't seen substantial increases. So I've asked the council to give me $40,000 in increases for the salaries for my lawyers who deserve, lawyers and staff. There are staff people there also that haven't had major increases in salary. So the $40,000 will be spread out according to the years of service and the complexity of the job, so that they can have some increase in their benefits and their ability to pay for their work to the office. That, you may remember last year I asked for additional personnel. I don't think the council granted it, so I came back a month later and asked for a change in the status. I took one of my lawyer spots and made it an investigator spot. That has proven to be a very cost-effective way of helping our office go through the cases. I now have 2 investigators in Sumter. Some of the other counties and circuits around have 4 to 5 investigators. I now have 2 investigators that can help us run cases and get things done to help my lawyers do their work, and it didn't cost me $70,000 to do that. The investigator position is $40,000 to $45,000. That was a good benefit, but I'm now, because of COVID, I'm down really where I need lawyers. Only lawyers can go to court and prosecute cases. I think the total budget that I've requested is $230,000. And while I will ask you to please give me the benefit of the doubt on this, please also know that my office has not received any new money in the 10 years that I've been the solicitor. Every dollar that I've gotten over and above what Sumter County has put in the budget comes from Columbia. We've had special money for victim advocates. We've had special money for domestic violence. We've had special money for DUI. All of that money comes from Columbia because of work that the legislature sees fit to help us with, and it helps this county give me some resources. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I know that you all have a tough job. I appreciate it, but 10 years is a long time.
I got just a quick question, if I could. I know last year we did do an investigative party, you came in, and you had two.
But you didn't do one, you just took a lawyer's spot and
We
made an
switched it,
investigator.
we just switched it around.
Right,
So you do have two investigators.
right,
And Sumter County's paying for both of those investigators.
yes, sir.
And Lee nor Clarendon have an investigator. Are they paying for an investigator?
They are not.
But aren't they using the investigators?
The
We have-
caseload there is smaller.
And it's nothing against you, it's just I think they need to chip in, is what I'm saying. Lee
Well,
and Clarendon,
the investigators here don't go to Clarendon, they don't go to Lee.
they don't do.
I have to rely on the local law enforcement to do things for my office. When they're out looking for a bad guy, I can't get them to come help me. That's the problem. In Sumter, I can't wait on them to have the sheriff or the chief send somebody over. That's why we have an investigation.
So these lawyers that you're asking for, will they also help with Clarendon and Lee?
No, sir,
Okay, so it's just Sumter.
to help with the 1,000 new cases that I got.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, two vacancies now. The two vacancies now you have?
The ones that left. have you
Well,
filled those?
one was filled with a part-time lawyer,
Okay.
but I'm having to pay his benefits, so, it worked out very well. He needed health insurance, and so bringing him on,
So you filled one.
I got one. And the other lawyer, left and went to DSS, and
You have not filled out.
have not.
So you have one vacancy right now.
Right. And I'm actually interviewing right now to fill that spot. The problem is, I can take on young lawyers with 3 years or less experience. And I can do certain things with them, but they can't go in the courtroom and try a murder case. So the two lawyers that left me, I'm looking for experience now so that I can replace that experience and I can carry some of these serious cases in the court instead of having to wait until a young lawyer gets trained up.
And that's 3 to 5 years. They got 3 to 5 years,
I think
that's experience.
that's the experience I'm looking for. Now, Horry County, Georgetown County is paying their first-time young lawyers $69,000 to come on board. No experience. They train them up, they keep them, they pay them good, they're able to keep them. I've lost 3 lawyers in the last 3 years because I just wasn't paying them enough. And 2 of my lawyers got really good promotions into once in a lifetime. One is a judge now. He'll be a judge until he retires. So, I mean, you couldn't turn that down. Nobody's mad about that, but I'm just saying, $70,000 is not a lot for an experienced lawyer who can help me move serious cases. Thank you all very much. While I'm here, Ms. Yvette sent me the slides today, and we haven't had a meeting on it, but I'm concerned with the numbers showing the fiscal year 20 and 21 budgets. There seems to be a large increase that I'm not aware of where that's coming from.
That's that 340 you spoke about, that it was in your expenses, but you want to see revenue to offset it, that's what that is.
So this will change,
No, that's included.
okay,
It's the 340, so you have
Okay.
the expense, but you have revenue that will offset that expense. So
okay,
both the revenue and expense are in there.
okay, good. All right, thank you.
And that was for the,
Special prosecutor.
You also have the public defender's office, don't you? You don't have nothing to do with the public defender's office.
I give them a lot of business.
I think it's the other way around.
That's
Oh,
true.
really?
Talk to you about my budget. As you know, this is probably the first time I've come before you all in forever, but I have requested an additional position this year. And, my primary reason is we just don't have enough hands to do all the things that we do. You know, out of the 46 counties, there's only, about 9 of us who are treasurer and tax collectors. Most counties, once it gets to March 16th, the, execution time, it rolls over, there's a separate delinquent tax collector that takes on, the responsibility of all the delinquent taxes and take care of it, and those treasurers are only having to deal with the collection of vehicle taxes. Well, in Sumter, I am treasurer and tax collector, so it doesn't roll over out of my office anywhere. And our biggest thing, and Jonathan can attest to this, is delinquency. Once it gets into a delinquent state, then it's a legal matter. And we have to make sure we are documenting and keeping everything at hand so that if someone's property is sold at a sale and they lose it, we keep a folder of everything that's taken place, because sometimes people don't come back until the court says it's been deeded, and then you gotta be able to prove that you've done everything according to the law on it. Well, another factor to that is, we are supposed to make sure deeds are done and in the new bidder's hand, people who bid on it within 150 days. That hasn't happened because we just don't have enough hands for everybody. We do them in-house, we do our deeds in-house, and Jonathan approves everything finally. We keep getting additional duties but no additional staff. We have to start issuing decals. That's another function that's been being done by the DMV. Years ago, most of the counties have already begun, and we haven't. So that's the thing I will have to start doing. It will only be to those customers who come in at the window. We will pass them out at the window. Those who mail in their payment or pay it online, DMV will still handle the mailing. But if you walk into the office and pay your taxes and you your sticker, then we will have to give you your sticker. Of course, we were supposed to start doing this last year, but with COVID, we didn't get a chance for everybody to go through the training at the Blackwood office. The other thing is, DNR has changed to, just like we have been doing weekly reporting and sending the DMV fees to DMV, well, now we're collecting the vote registration fees as well. And so that's a reconciliation and reporting. Every week I have to have someone compare what we've collected, make sure it go on DNR's website, make sure they download their program. We're making sure all that's done, reconciled, and having a check sent to them for their weekly collections of the DNR fees. Not mad about it, because we are glad that DNR has done what DMV does, so that's allowing us to catch more revenue for boat and motor taxes. Because in the past, people didn't pay their taxes, but they were still getting their renewal fees, renewal registrations from DNR, because all they had to do was send their $30 registration there, and there was no proof required as to whether they had paid property taxes. Well, now, boats and motors are just like vehicles. So you will have to pay your taxes in order for them to mail you your registration fee. So instead of that $30 every 3 years, they are paying a $10 renewal fee each year, and we're collecting it. So I gave a handout, I think Mary has passed to you all. I also believe that this position will pay for itself. What I've passed out to you is all the delinquent business personal property tax that are currently on our books for the last 10 years, because we can only go back 10 years. But I recently signed an agreement with American Financial Credit Services. This is a company who is like a collection agency who's partnered with a lot of the counties already. I think they're currently serving about 33 of the counties. And they will go after and collect those. It doesn't cost us anything. They will charge a fee, and they get their fee directly from the customers. But whatever dollars of ours that they collect, then will come to us. It's a process, and first, we will have to send out a letter to them, all those people, and telling them that they have 30 days to come in and satisfy it with us, or it will be turned over to the collection agency. And if they don't pay it, of course, once we turn it over, then they will go after that. So as you can see, the bottom line figured at $8.2 million. That's what's currently outstanding for all these years. And that is only county tax dollars. I did not do the total, I only picked up the county tax portion of it. And what that is I broke it down into the areas, is aircraft, any planes and stuff, taxes that have not been paid. The office furniture, those are your local returns, primarily like attorney's offices and stuff. And then the SCDOR, those are those people who are supposed to file their returns with the South Carolina Department of Revenue, and the auditor bills them for their taxes. People don't pay those things because they know they're not sold at a tax sale. And we don't sell them because we would have to physically have a place to put them. When you get them, you gotta have a place to store it, because when you sell it, unlike real property, it's not a redemption period, so you deliver it there. So, and what I attached also is, American Financial Credit Services sent me an update of where they are with what success they've had with other counties. They listed all the counties and when they started with them, the amounts that were turned over to them, and how much success they've had in collections and all that. So, yes, sir.
Jim, you say there's no cost, they will attach a separate fee, we still get 100% of the.
Yeah, we will get all of our tax dollars. Their fee that they will charge, they take it from the customer.
Additional fee added on.
Yeah, like most collection agencies, a lot of them would take it off of yours. And when they first presented that at one of our meetings years ago, nobody was going for it. So they revamped, because they took the time to talk to us and ask. And then they decided, well, this fee, they can charge it, but they can charge it to the person who owes the delinquent taxes. So that's where they will get their fee. Any questions?
So you feel like this position will be paid for?
Yeah.
I mean, I can see, it's probably averages 20%,
Yeah.
that you were gonna.
If you see, of course, you won't get all of these dollars, because if you would look at the report I gave you, when the auditor bills people, a lot of times DOR will send, and tell them, to tax them at a higher amount, because these people are not filing their business personal property tax return. So they tax them at a higher amount. If they actually file the return and, tell them the actual value of it, it's probably the assessment's gonna be lower, but you'll still get your tax dollars. But so many of them don't even file a return. Everybody opens a business, but nobody files a return.
Is that letter I get from her each year about assessment of, I guess, what I own in my business?
Yeah, business
And I
personal
just
property
give it to
tax,
you.
yeah, you're supposed to file a return. Like I said, those,
I just give
some
it
of
to
them
the
file it
account.
locally, and then those who have a PT 100, they're supposed to file that with the Department of Revenue.
My accountant's been doing it right.
Yeah, real businesses have accountants who take care of it.
I don't get no trouble.
So I hope that you all will please approve the position. It's much needed. We do a lot down there. It's not just handling the customers that come to the window. There's a lot that goes on in the treasurer's office.
Ms. Richardson, so this is just adding to your head count, but it'll be paid for.
Yes, sir.
Chair, if I may add, we obviously have not booked that additional revenue. We'll get to Ms. Richardson, because, we have to wait and see whether you approve the position first. And if you do, then we'll readjust some of our revenue to offset this.
So, I guess it was state mandated that DMV and DNR
Well, the
collections were doing
DMV
it.
side has been going on for years. Even when I took office, and I've been down there 20 years, they were already collecting the DMV fee. Well, what DMV did was, when it comes to the issuance, we were already collecting their fee. But about issuing decals, when they first did it years ago, they tried to say, a must, and everybody complained because we would have to have special printers, all this stuff. So they changed the law to say that counties may. But now it's kind of being forced because of the way they've rewritten their stuff and said we have to be CIDR compliance, and we are one of the few counties who's not. However, they did put in that statute that each county, you can charge an additional $1 on the tax bills to help offset, like we have to, buy the paper, special paper for printing those things on, that of course we'll have to keep the registrations and all those things under lock and key, and the decals, because of course they have numbers on them. But most counties have said that $1 that's charged on the tax bills does help them keep up with their printers and, the supplies that they need.
How about the DNR situation?
DNR, we did not.
they didn't send any money with it either.
No, there's no money, we just collect it and send it to them, there's no money, that's one of those unfunded mandates. But you get money in a sense that what they do now, because even when people buy a new boat, if it's been flagged as they have back taxes, they will not let them get a registration until their taxes are satisfied, so that
We
is
should
forced
see an
people.
increase.
Yes, we have been starting, more people have come in now. DNR says, you got something flagged on me, so yes, you owe 3 or 4 years worth of taxes, and so they can't get a sticker for their boat unless they pay those old taxes, so that has picked up with the boat and motor taxes. Because if any of you own a boat or motor, you probably recognize that when the real property notices went out in October, you didn't get one. And the reason being because you'll get your notice when your renewal month is. So she didn't do those billings.
Just like cars.
Right, just like your car. You get your bill, the month before it's due. Any more questions? Thank you
Thank
all
you,
for
Ms.
your
Rich.
time.
Do you have a dollar amount attached to this position?
Yes, it was on the slide there.
39.
I believe the, corner, right there.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I've got 2 requests for you, then I'll get in some detail. I'm asking for a part-time, 35-hour part-time deputy coroner, somebody that I can add on to our call rotation, because right now there's just me and Mr. Rogers. We're on call every other week. And even when you're not on call, you're subject to being called. I'm asking $32,000 for that. I think the benefit package runs it up to about 41. And then also I've got a part-time deputy coroner that works 20 hours a week. I'm going to bump him up to 25 and increase his salary by $5,000. He does my transports to and from Charleston. And to be honest with you folks, I autopsied 8 people last week. We spent 3 trips going up and down with 2 people at a time going to Charleston. And there were murder, suicides, drug overdose deaths, vehicle fatalities. You had no choice. And a 2-year-old, by the way. So we're mandated on a lot of these autopsies that we're having to do. Just to let you know, the first 3 years I was in office, we averaged 750 deaths a year that we worked. Last year we worked 950. This year we are already averaging 90 deaths a month, and if you do the math, we're going to be looking at about 1,100 deaths this year. And that's keeping in mind that COVID has slowed down tremendously. I've only had 1 death in about the last 3 weeks. But suicides are going out off the ceilings. Drug overdose, I was talking to Jimmy, 4 in the last week and a half we've had, all 35 and younger. Suicides and drug overdose are getting this bad. And a lot of older people now, I think, are dying of natural causes because they were so afraid to go to the doctor during the pandemic that they didn't take care of the medical needs, and henceforth, natural death is catching up with them at a faster alarming rate. I looked at Sumter's kind of unique that it's a mid-sized county, so it's really hard to compare maybe 1 or 2 counties in the state population-wise. But I looked at Lancaster and I looked at Kershaw, who I know both their corners well. Both counties' population is considerably smaller than Sumter, and they're all working with 4 people on their staff, 3 full-time and 1 part-time, where I've got 2 full-time and 1 part-time. And this will drastically help me increase the way we can keep up with the work pace and the workload that we've got right now, because I hate to tell you this, it's not slowing down. It's getting worse. It's getting worse and worse. And just like the sheriff, I'm the only elected official that works 24/7, 7 days a week. It doesn't matter. The phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning, you get up, you go. I mean, I signed up for it. I'm not complaining about it, but it's not slowing down, folks. It's getting worse, and it's gonna get worse. I think probably towards the latter part of this year, hopefully things will slow down when everybody that has been vaccinated and wants to be vaccinated. But I think a lot of older people, I think the COVID and the pandemic's catching up with them. I think a lot of the older people that just were afraid to go to the doctor, I think natural causes is catching up with them. It really is. And on another note, we're a small office, but with council's approval about 2 years ago, y'all passed an ordinance to where I could assess a fee for copies of autopsy and toxicology reports with the legal approval of the next of kin to insurance companies and attorneys. We're gonna probably generate about another $7,000, almost $8,000 in revenue this year just from what we've given out to insurance companies and attorneys in South Carolina for, you know, life insurance policies, but that's, and once we have legal approval from the next of kin, but we're looking at about $7,000 probably extra this year that we're gonna generate in revenue that we didn't generate last year. So, you know, I desperately need this person. I know I asked for it last year, and I know things were tight last year, but, I did not see the 200 additional deaths coming on at the end of last year. And like I said, we're on pace for about 1,100 this year. But we desperately need the help, so that we can keep up. A lot of people don't realize we subpoena medical records on every death that we work. We consult doctors firsthand, which they appreciate that, which is something that wasn't done in the past before. And that takes time. And I have no secretary or administrative assistant. So me and Brian basically do all of our paperwork, all of our case files, everything administratively is done by one of the two of us. So an extra person would drastically help us with call volume. But if anybody's got any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them.
Jimmy's already suited up, crap.
Hey,
He sees me out there.
we'll take any help we can get, I can promise you that.
What is the drug overdose increase this year?
Oh, yeah, I told the item last year that because of the pandemic, that you were gonna see an increase in drug overdose and suicides, and we have. I think we've had 8 drug overdose deaths since January, and we've had 3 or even 4 in the last 2.5 weeks. All of them in that 30, 35 and younger range. And suicides, we probably had about 8 of those since the first year too. It's sad, but it's a fact of life. It's happening.
Gary, I was gonna ask Gary, can COVID money cover anything with a coroner, or is that, have y'all looked into that?
We haven't gotten that deep into it yet, but.
I know one-time money's not a good idea.
I know me and Gary talked about a walk-in cooler. Folks, I'm gonna tell you, I had a gentleman 3 weeks ago, and this is true, 775 pounds. It took 10 of us to get him in a body bag, and the gurney collapsed as we were getting it in the back of the truck. And we had to take him to Newberry that afternoon, because Charleston couldn't take him to that night, because we didn't have a cooler big enough to house this individual, and you couldn't let him sit out there for 6 hours. So, I mean, this man was this wide and stood about this high off the floor. That's how big he was. 775 pounds. I got the autopsy report to verify it. And we didn't have a cooler big enough for big man, and we could not leave him out in the open as you know, even that, I mean, but it's true.
We do feel like the cooler would qualify.
Yeah, you can put about 6 to 8 people in that cooler, and you can actually put them on a gurney and roll them in that cooler. And we've got the space for it too, so. And, I hate to say it, but we're one bus wreck away on I-95 from having 6 to 7 to 8 potential fatalities, and you better have a place to put them at when you got them. Yes, sir.
Did, the state fund your position there?
No, sir. The state passed a bill in 2016, coroner's pay bill. Every coroner has complied by setting up an infant fatality review board on any child death that we have, 17 and younger. We set up a review board with the law enforcement agency and with DSS and a doctor from DSS and SLED. We fulfilled our obligation, but the state and their infinite wisdom is an unfunded mandate, like one we were talking about earlier, that they've never funded since 2016. But yet, well, I'm not even gonna say that, but yet but no, so they did pass that bill 4 years ago, and every coroner has complied with it, but it's unfunded. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baker.
But if nobody has a question, I got a family I need to go speak to, so, thank you all.
Okay. Here we've got, Ms. Brunson next, certainly last but not least.
Last but
It's
not
always
least,
good seeing our
certainly the
veteran career
most,
director.
important piece to this operation here. And I won't be before you long. I, certainly, have respect for your time. I just stand here simply to request an additional employee in the Sumter County Veteran Affairs Office to help us control the demand that is constantly increasing for veteran services. As you know, with veterans, they are very important to the community, and they require patience when we are assisting them.
because they suffer from disability. So with that being said, with the phone ringing and with veterans waiting in the lobby, it gets a little bit overwhelming, but we are able to control it all. So I won't be before you long, but I am asking for this additional personnel this year that will help us complete our goals, which are to serve those who have served. And I do have a little bit of statistics here in case you think that you're unaware of how much revenue veterans actually receive in Suffolk County. So the total amount of distribution of VA federal expenditures for Suffolk County exceed $182 million. This includes $120 million in compensation and pension paid directly to the veterans that live right here in Suffolk County and the widows. We do not take credit for all those funds, but we do work hard, and our hard work do play a major role in changing the lives of our veterans. Sumter County ranks number 7 when it comes to the highest amount of federal expenditures in South Carolina, with Richland County being number 1. And Sumter County ranks number 13 in the highest veteran population in South Carolina, with Richland County being number 1. So we have a lot of veterans, they have a lot of needs. So we just hope that you will consider helping us out in office so we can serve our citizens that have served our country.
Ms. Brunson,
Yes.
first of all, thank you for the wonderful work that you do for our veterans.
Thank you, sir.
And I just want to confirm, as I thought I read during my campaign, that there were 3,000 veterans that did not get service last year as a result of the staff shortage. Is that correct?
I'm glad you asked that, Councilman Washington, because I would like to clarify that at this very moment. The 3,000 disparity number are veterans that could be of various different reasons. Our numbers do not match the Department of Veteran Affairs numbers. The Department of Veteran Affairs has 13,159 veterans receiving benefits and something. Our records are, we have 16,446 veterans on file. So there's the 3,000 veterans. So, but those veterans could be deceased. They could have moved and did not give us a updated address. They could have not filed for VA compensation as of yet. So we want to identify those 3,000, but they are not 3,000 that were knocking on our door and couldn't get in. That's not the case. We just want to verify the numbers, clean them up, and make them more accurate.
But you would agree there are a good number of veterans out there who need service.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Brunson.
Quick question, last year you asked for a part-time, right?
Yes, sir.
And now you're asking for a full-time?
Did I ask for a part-time? Every year I ask for a position.
No,
It is
you
not-
asked
you asked for
full-time, but I
think
said you will accept the part.
Right,
Okay.
that's what I recall
That's
reading the
it.
minutes.
That is exactly right, Councilman Baker.
Well, but I'm looking at your numbers and they're less than what the coroner asked for part-time, so, I mean, that's pretty
Well,
much.
yeah, because,
I mean-
I mean, you know, you're doing a lot of
Not a whole
secretary
lot
work,
there,
and
yeah.
you're not out in the field like the coroner person.
Yeah,
So that's why the
right,
salary is
when I look at the
low.
number, I expected that to be a part-time.
No, that would be
Yeah,
full-time,
okay.
and of course, we'll try to hire a veteran, you know,
Yeah, that's
so
what
that
my next question
they can
was.
use their VA
You would use
benefits.
a veteran probably to do it.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Any other questions? Thank
No,
you for
ma'am.
all that you
We're
do.
good.
Thank
You
you.
do some wonderful things for our veterans there, and they are so deserving of what you do. So we really do thank you for it.
The number is, I thought it would be part-time.
Thank you, ma'am.
You are.
Chair, if I may just kind of wrap it up, first I too want to thank the folks coming tonight. You can tell we've got some wonderful folks representing Suffolk County who feel very professional, very knowledgeable, and specifically in their profession, and well respected around the state of South Carolina. So thank y'all for what you do. Always it's difficult, as we try to find new monies for our operations. Just to kind of total things up, the total request is, for the individuals tonight, including the benefits package, would be $342,600. Obviously, there's potential for revenue offset, particularly in the treasurer's office. That would likely reduce it down to just over $303,000. And the coroner mentioned that there may be some additional revenues with the fees that he's able to collect, but I believe we've already booked that as a revenue for us, but I'll confirm that. So roughly around $300,000, give or take a few dollars, is what we're talking about additional personnel costs. So that's pretty much, is that pretty well right? That's what we have, sir. And again, we're not looking for any votes tonight. This is information and just something for you to consider as we move forward with the budget process. At some point, we will ask for determination by council on these issues so that we can then build the budget accordingly. That's all I have, sir.
All right, anybody got anything else?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion, in reference to our litter fund proposal as to how we would consider funding, because we know we're all gonna address this year. And so at this time, I would like to make a motion that we would allocate one new mill to fund the litter program as an individually listed item on the tax bill, as we have done other items, as we list them separately on the tax bill, so they would show up one mill, litter fund, and then the taxpayers would see it, and instead of just putting it into the general fund, and it would be one mill every year. Maybe one year we get to the point where we don't need it. We can always wish, but I don't see that happening. But anyway, and I would also like to direct our administrator to come back with us with a recommendation on how to budget the monies for that one mill that it would come up with, and hopefully could have that by our next meeting for us. I also want to include this in my motion. We all see the list every year of all of our agencies, as what we call them, other agencies that we fund that are not mandated for us to fund. I would like for the administrator to work with them in coming up with a way that they will help us in this educational process, because all of them have a web page or some way that they can help us with the educational process. Be it just something on their web page, or just, for example, RTA, the buses. I say, we buy the signs, RTA puts signs on the buses addressing litter and problems. And I think there's, every agency, there's a way that they can help us in the education of litter. I mean, if you sit down and go through the list, I mean, some of them have festivals and stuff to help us, let us go, and we put up things, just whatever way, but I'd like for them to funnel that through the administrator to how they would help us with that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to be heard. I think that's a fine motion by the councilman from Wilson Hall, but I think there's some other options to funding the litter program. We may be able to use some COVID money. We may be able to use some hospitality funding. And before we go to taxing residents, I want to make sure that that is the last resort. So as a substitute motion, I would like for the county administrator to bring us back a number of options to
The mill, we're gonna have to use a mill at least to deal with this litter. I mean, you're talking about buying equipment, you're talking about hiring a new position.
You can use the hospitality fund to buy the litter truck.
Hospitality.
Economic development.
That's
so sure about that.
I'm not comfortable using it.
It's been done in other places.
Mr. Chairman, I guess, I noticed that neither one of those motions, received a second.
Well, I was gonna second
Well,
the mill.
you know, we did have a committee meeting this afternoon, well, yeah, a committee meeting. And, the letter is being discussed. It seems to be a little bit premature.
It is.
So, because we don't have any solid numbers, you know, we haven't come down to where some real good metrics have been determined.
As the county
you
administrator
know,
said, we
but I
don't know where the
understand, you know,
COVID, how much the COVID money can go.
yeah.
Mr.
You know,
Mitchell,
and I support that.
isn't litter one of the discussions at one of our future?
It is, believe it, next week, next Tuesday, we have it built into the budget as a conversation, so.
So,
I'll withdraw my motion, Mr. Chairman, if we can have that conversation later.
and I,
Oh, yeah, I can withdraw it, bring it back up, but just for discussion, yes, hopefully we're gonna see some COVID money that we can use, but of course, it'll have to be used for capital.
Yeah.
Not salaries.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be a lot of salaries, it's not just gonna be one salary to get this addressed. And we know that, and we're gonna probably end up having to hire contract help and all too, so there's gonna be a lot, and hopefully the mill will do it. I don't know, but hopefully we use COVID money or capital money somewhere to buy equipment that's needed, and it wouldn't come out as a mill. I anticipate. But that's why I say I asked the administrator to come back with how he would feel like he could budget that money.
And what does a mill produce, about 300?
Roughly 300,000.
And again, I know this has gotta be flushed out, we'll certainly work with staff and look at other areas, my concern would be, particularly with COVID, that's one-time money, so that's not gonna be sustainable.
Right.
You might be able to cover some stuff up front, but it's not gonna be sustainable. The hospitality, I'm familiar, they have used that in some other areas. Unfortunately, that's not a big pool of money for us, and again, that takes away from other efforts if we start using it in the litter program. If we're serious about littering, in my opinion, early, at least at this point, I would say if we can dedicate a reoccurring meal for the purpose, I think it's more sustainable long-term. But I also understand your concern about overtaxing it. So let us flush it out and see what options are there. And I also know that, you know, in some communities, particularly where they add more than one litter officer, and they have, for example, Orangeburg has 3, well, they generate a pretty decent amount of revenue off of those 3 officers that do nothing but write tickets for their operations.
They can do.
Yeah, so there, I'll pursue that, let's see, but
you can't budget that into
it's hard to
next year.
know what that's
budget
gonna
as a
be.
Prediction.
Yeah, it's hard to know what that's gonna be sustainable. That, I think that's the key I would be looking for, is what's sustainable, long-term, because this is not gonna be an issue that we address for a couple of years, it's gonna be ongoing in our community.
What we do, because I agree with both individuals there, maybe half a meal. I like the idea of separating it. I think the buy-in from the community will be there, they know where the money's going to, okay? So I'm okay with a meal, whatever it takes to make it work, but, again, we gotta be sensitive to taxes as well, so. That's all, so, more of a statement than anything else, sorry.
We'll just be ready next meeting, and have a good conversation about it.
yeah, Mr. Chair, before our guests leave, I did want to, thank them, and say ditto to what Gary said about, we are proud of the way you all represent Sumter. And I hope that we'll be able to help you all this year. And I did want to ask them, Ms. Richardson, Madam Treasurer, every now and then we get calls from constituents who would like to utilize the digital part of paying their taxes, and they tell us about that cost. And I was just wondering what can be done to alleviate the cost that they have to acquire in paying those taxes.
Counties have to eat the card.
Additionally,
unless y'all can afford to, when I first came to you in 2002 and asked to take credit cards, the bank charges what they call a discount rate, which is about 2.5%. That was the discount that they gave me at that time for credit card transactions. So that's why, and we could not afford to do that. I mean, because that means they would pay it, somebody has to pay that cost. And so the only thing Sumter gets from the credit card transactions is our tax dollars, and our provider gets the discount rate in order to pay the banking debt. There were a couple of counties when they first started taking credit cards that boasted that they were not gonna charge fees, and some of them have gone back and started when they realized what it was costing them. So to alleviate it, Sumter County would have to budget funds to cover that cost.
And I'm not looking for another, burden on the taxpayers, but it would be interesting to see what a projected amount, it would cost to, bring it down more reasonable, so that, you know, because we do live in a digital era, and, but if someone is paying, like, over $1,000 in taxes, and you apply that percentage to it, that's a pretty good, tab for them to have to pay. So, if you know, I don't know, you know, what your metrics are, but if you could, you know.
What are you wanting to know though?
What, if, you know, you said if Sumter County could pay it, you know, give us some metrics, give us some figures as to what it might would be.
Okay, on that, what I can do for you is I can tell you the amount, that has been paid through credit cards, and then I can tell you what that discounted rate would be, and, cause it's a lot. It's not cheap, other counties will tell you it is costly.
Okay. And
But
that's just a
the
thought
bank's
now,
charge.
that's just a thought, because those who have to pay a lot already have a lot, and so to whom much, unto whom much is given, much is required. But, you know, it's still a thought and something that, you know, I would like to consider.
I'll get some numbers for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Blandon, did you wanna say something? She putting the air back on the fire.
I just wanted to, that big sign up there.
Oh,
I think she
they
wants to
already,
happy birthday to
they
Mr.
already did that.
They did
They
it.
did, that while you were out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, if you got some cake or something, then that's a different story. If there's nothing else, I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are.